Hello, auction planners. Welcome to the Valentine's Day edition of Benefit Auction Ideas. We are going to be talking about approachability today. And we're talking about approachability because this came to me a few weeks ago and I thought, oh, I'll save this for Valentine's Day. Years ago, like maybe 4 years into my business, I was working for a performing arts organization. And as part of that event, there was a trip to Italy that I was selling. And about midway through the bidding cycle, this woman who was right up in the front, she started bidding on this and she ended up winning it. Now, I had since seen her at other galas throughout the years, and I guess it was one of the more recent ones. And I was visiting with her because she remembered. She remembered that she bought that trip, and that was the first time that, she'd kind of seen me and so forth. And she bought that trip to Italy. And she says, I'd been to Italy before. She said, I took my daughter, we had a great time. You just made that trip sound so good. I wanted to take advantage of it. And that's what I mean by approachability. I mean, maybe I'm stretching it here to say it just sounds so good or so interesting or so approachable, because I do think that, especially with our trips, which tend to be our highest sellers in the benefit auction, that they can be intimidating to people. And here's why I say that. First, it's very well known. Americans, generally speaking, are not that well traveled compared to some of our peers in other similar types of countries. And there's good reasons for that, right? I mean, the United States is a very large, diverse, culturally diverse geographically. So you could spend your entire life here visiting the United States and still not see everything on your vacations. But beyond that, too, is we tend to have 2 to 3 weeks of vacation. Do you really want to take 2 days to get somewhere and 2 days to get back? That's a long trip. You're not really enjoying your vacation. There's the cost factor as far as flights and so forth go. There's the language barrier in many cases. So because of that, I just think that Americans generally are not well traveled. Now, that said, I do live in an area that is a bit more well-traveled population. We've got a lot of embassy workers here, Peace Corps people here, corporate people who are traveling abroad, tied into that, contractors, government, military, and so forth. Not unusual to be at a party, meet someone who is from a different country, and get to know them and get to understand their country. So you become a little bit more aware because of that. But even then, I'm still doing these techniques that I'm going to teach you, 3 of them, in my events here in DC too, because I just think that it helps people feel like they can take that trip too, even if they've never been there. So the first one I want to talk about is this idea of providing some additional phrasing in your descriptions in order to make it sound easy to get to the place, because it's a stretch wherever you're going. But sometimes if we do a little bit of extra research for people, it just makes it that much easier. Like, oh, I could do that. We could do that. It doesn't sound hard, So let me give you an example of that. On a simple basis, I was selling Turks and Caicos. This is a trip that I often sell at this particular auction. And the couple who donated it is in the room. This is their second home. And so I make that comment. I said, the donors have said that the donors who are in the room tonight have said that you'll absolutely want to rent a car once you get there because the island is so beautiful and you're going to want to explore some other locations. Okay. Now, why is that approachable? Well, for one thing, the donors are right there. So if I'm buying this, I can go talk to the donors about their home, the island, and so forth. But the other thing I usually say about that particular trip is I'll say, you land at the airport, the villa is 10 minutes from the airport, you will be on the beach in the sand in 10 minutes. That sounds appealing. It's 10 minutes from the airport? Ooh, sounds more appealing. So something like that is something that you can work into your description. Another example, Grenada. Grenada, if I hear that, when I did that, I had to do the research because I'm like, Grenada, where's Grenada? I don't remember where Grenada is. So when I'm describing that, what do I have here in my notes? I'll say, friends, let's think back to geography. Grenada is an island country northeast of Venezuela, very easy to get to from DC. We have direct flights from BWI during high season. If you don't go in high season, you're going to be connecting through Miami or Atlanta. Done. Okay. Direct flights, BWI. We have 3 airports in the DC area, so it makes it pretty easy to get to a lot of places. So that's something that I would be saying to make it easy to get to. Again, making that accessible. Hang on one second. I had to get my cheat sheet. Okay, the next point I want to talk about is maps. Maps are wonderful and they're visual and they make it easy for people to see where they're going. So I like to use maps on poster boards if you're using poster boards to describe these live auction items. The other thing that you can do is on the slideshow, have a map of the world with a big old arrow. Boom, that's where we're going to go. I like maps. And then thirdly, you can provide extra content to your auctioneer. I like to do a ton of research on these things before I sell them because I like to have little tidbits. And this isn't stuff that is included in the package. It's not like they're getting scuba diving as part of their package per se, but I want to be able to talk about it if the situation arises. So there's a ton of YouTubers out there who make a living traveling around the world. So I like to watch some of them to get tips for different areas that I'm selling. But also there's just like travel magazines and online travel journals and so forth that you can get some of this. So in this case, I'll go back to Grenada here. This is an example of something that when I sold this, I don't exactly remember what I said, but I've got it down here. So we'll just pretend. One of them is, okay, they have something called a hash. Oh, turn off my phone there. So I might say, as part of the description, after I've talked about this house that they're going to stay in and how fabulous it is and all that, I might say, oh, and I know we got a lot of runners in the room. They've got something that is called a hash. It's a locally organized run. They do these all the time. People run on the beach. They run through the jungle, all over the place. Think of it like a fun run with a big party at the end. Talk to the concierge at the resort. You'll want to participate in one of those. That's an example of something that I'm talking about. It sounds approachable, especially if you're a runner. Now, let's say that we're in the midst of the bidding. And I've got somebody over here who's at $6,000. I'm trying to get him to go to $6,500. And so I'm going to pause for a moment because I want to give them a bit of time to assess. Their heads are together. Should we do this? Should we do this? So I'm going to give them a moment. And while I'm giving them a moment, I'm going to provide some more information. So I'm going to be like, we're at $6,000. Would it go to $6,500? I didn't even mention the fact that we've got an underwater sculpture garden there, 10 feet under the water. You can start exploring an entire museum of underwater sculptures there. Would it go to $6,500? You see, it's just a little bit of information to make it more interesting. So the scuba divers or somebody who wants to scuba dive, 10 feet under the water, I can start seeing this underwater sculpture park. That sounds pretty cool. Those can be provided to your auctioneer as little tidbits that can be thrown out like breadcrumbs as you just encourage people to take those nibbles, little pieces of chocolate, you might say, since we're talking about Valentine's Day, little pieces of chocolate that they can take and get satiated by and want to bid on your stuff. So there we have it, the 3 items. Number 1, additional phrasing as it relates to location and getting to a property. Number 2, the maps, visual. And number 3, providing extra content to the auctioneer in terms of activities, things that they might want to do and so forth. Before I let you go, I will let you know as well, we have our new benefit auction item guide, what really flew in 2022, the top 100 items that I sold for overvalue in the auctions that I worked last year around the country. That's always a great one for procurement and lots of cool ideas that you can get in there. And then the other one too, I'm talking on I've never talked before about association auctions, but I have been asked by NX Unite to speak about association events. So I'm going to be on a panel with a couple of other people here. I don't have their names, but I can tell you it is February the 21st at noon Eastern. And if you want to register for that, if you're an association employee or someone who is, refer them over to NX Unite. And I'm sure if you find your way through the website, you can get registered for that as well. Looking forward to that because, again, I've never talked about it, but I have several association clients every year, and they each do a little bit different with their galas, where they raise money and how they do it. So I'll be sharing some of those ideas that you can use at your association conference, perhaps. If you'd like to subscribe, like, share, we'd love to have you as part of the community. Good luck to you in your fundraising event.